All right. I think
we don't have an intro anymore, do we? No.
I didn't. No, I didn't.
Intro. We'll just start talking.
Yeah, we'll just start talking.
Actually, the one podcast I listen to every now and then, depending on who he has on, is it the Joe Rogan podcast. And I like how they start the podcast. It's almost like they've been talking for 15, 20 minutes and they just sort of gradually they just sort of come in and, okay, now that sentence is finished, we just move on to what we have you here
in the middle of things. Yeah.
It's good. It's good. We should do that a little bit more, like just now, maybe. But Matt, thanks again for coming on. This is I was going to say, was it six years now? You've been gracing us with your presence, which has been great.
It's been that while. It doesn't feel like it's changed at all because Junior Seau's still over your left shoulder.
He is.
So
yeah.
So I dig that. At least consistency. So I dig that.
I always have a little bit of sorrow is not really quite the right word. Well, he was always my favorite player, but he's the same age as me, So that I always find a little hard, And I sort of look at Junior over there, and I think, man, I'm turning
hard in the fact that he's no longer here, or hard in the fact that he achieved so much, and you're at the same age now. You haven't even got close to what he's done.
Trust you to take that angle on it. Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Jake.
Just trying to work you out. We'll put you on the couch. And
now that we're warmed up sufficiently.
That's right.
So, look, we got obviously here for the wide receiver class, Matt. And look, just the overview. When I sat down and started watching the class, I'm not going to say underwhelmed because that's not fair to the players that are coming out. But compared to what we've been handed to us over the past number of years, with the Chasers and the Waddles and the Jeffersons, I was just like, it's not going to reach that sort of peak in this class. How did you feel? Like just an overall view to start off with.
Sure. Well, I mean, certainly the past 2 years have been really strong. Really, even the past 3 has been good. And this class, it's a weird class, I think is the best way to put it. And the reason why is that on the one hand, right as they are right now, I think there's 6 to 8 players who will be solid starters, if not high-end contributors, in three receiver sets in the league. Like if they match up well, there's about 6 to 8 guys who are capable of that happening and being able to build into being good starters, maybe even 2 or 3 of them being excellent starters, top 15 fantasy players. But then there's another 8 players. And what I've kind of described is that they're players that if they all somehow develop in ways that it's going to be harder for them to develop, half of those 8 players might be better than the guys in the first tier, because they have that kind of potential. But there's landmines under all of those guys. Like their game, the flaws that they have, the things they have to learn some of them are difficult things to develop, and they're really central to playing wide receiver in the NFL. So they may have gotten away with it in college, but they haven't gotten away with it. They're not probably going to get away with it as much in the pros. So it's a real boom bust class where how I've kind of looked at it was, this class on the surface doesn't look as good as the past 2 classes, but this class seems to me guaranteed to make everyone look like a fool, because either everyone's going to develop and it's going to be like one of the best classes we've seen in the past 5 years because there's that potential there, or it's going to be what we expect to some degree, but some of the players that people are really high on, the bottom's just going to drop out, and you're going to have a bunch of like Cortland Sutton in a bad mood, kind of situations where, I had Cortland Sutton, I think 18th ranked in that class, and a lot of people had him as a top 5 player, and he's had one really strong season. But he's doing something that we're going to see a lot of from this class when we talk about him, which is clapping the football, clap attacking, and being serial clap attackers in ways, and why that's not such a good thing.
Yeah, like when I was looking at this class, I thought I didn't even go this year. I didn't even go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I seriously, I couldn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have, Matt, because that's part of what you do, and you looking at it far deeper than I do. I'm watching 3 games and there's some highlights and trying to work it out from that. And even some of the guys trying to find, I don't know how you do it, trying to find game footage on some of these guys is like harder. I found it the hardest this year than I have in the past. But there's a lot of guys I found. I said to AJ before you came on, is that I'm intrigued by a lot of guys. They have traits that you're always going to find those guys that take the next step because they move up a level. They're playing at the level they are because that's what they have to play. But you're going to get those guys that they're going to step up against the pro, and their game is going to. We see it all the time, don't we? Justin Jefferson was a very good college football, and he's just stepped up to the next level and just.
Stephon Diggs is a good example of a guy who was a mid-round guy, Viking slot receiver that seemed to do pretty well, and next thing you know, he's an elite player.
Yeah, because they're those guys that you can they just rise to the level of the game that they're playing at. And there's going to be those guys in this class. There has to be. There will be. I don't know who the hell they're going to be, Matt. I don't. I really don't. But there are some very intriguing guys. And so, like, we'll talk about. Well, we'll start at everybody's list. Basically, I see it's not yours, Matt. It's not mine. But someone like Quentin Johnson, and I've heard you talk, a number of times about it, and it's quite weird. We must be sharing the same outlook on how we see. Everything you've said is everything that I wrote down, and the one thing that I haven't heard you talk about as much, but you're probably in on it, is the fact that I feel he has no idea who's around him. He has no idea where the defender is, because he allows balls to come to his body. And, mate, don't you know that the guy's standing, you're lucky that you're in college football and he's half a step behind you, because in the pros, mate, that ball's not getting to you.
Yeah.
He'd rather catch it against his body with a guy with a wingspan that's so big.
Yeah.
He will not catch it out in front, which is another problem because he drops it all the time.
Yeah.
So how did you view him overall?
Yeah, overall, it's like this. If he's the quintessential wide receiver that is like representative of this class, in the sense that he's, as a route runner, he could become very good. He's on his way to becoming a very good route runner. He's got the size that you're looking for. He has terrific speed. Yep. He could be physical. He's physical as a runner in the open field. And all of that's great. And just like a guy from a long time ago played for the Tennessee Volunteers, who got drafted by the Saints, I think in the first or second round, who was supposed to be one of the best receivers in that class, Robert Meacham. He's kind of the Robert Meacham of this class, which is everything looks great until it's time to attack the football. And then at that point, that's the part that just is completely off base. And so, like you said, he doesn't understand with the defenders in the area what type of position to use, how to attack the ball earlier, and then also what position to use his hands to attack it. And so he defaults a lot to the underhand position in situations where he needs to attack it at the earliest point and maximize that length that he has with his frame and his body position. And what's interesting is that from last year to this year, you can see that he's improved. Now, when I say improved, he's making the effort to use his hands the correct way sometimes, not all the time. But even when it's sometimes, it's like Robert Meacham. I remember watching him against LSU years ago, and in the first half of the game, he was catching everything the way that it's coached. But it looked like he was doing a math problem. He was like he couldn't get it all. He was fighting the ball a little bit every time in, juggles, or it just wasn't completely secured in his hands as he brought in, and he dropped multiple passes in the first half.
Is it because his brain's working on the process of catching the ball?
Yes.
And his hands aren't keeping up with his brain. Where if you get the natural guy, the brain doesn't have to process anything. I already know, my hands already know what to do.
Yeah, and that's basically, there's not enough. He hasn't practiced it enough yet. He hasn't drilled it enough to where he's automatic with where his hands need to be relative to where the ball is. And that's what's happening with him, is that he's having to think, and then it slows everything down and he's fighting everything. Robert Meacham in the second half of that game said, screw it. I'm just going to catch it the way I'm not supposed to. And he caught everything in that game. The problem is in the second half of that game. But then you go to the Saints, and like you said, NFL defenders are going to be closer. They're going to know how to play it better. They're going to be able to anticipate different things. They're going to be able to read him and be able to be more accurate with their way of defending the target. And he's not going to hold up if he's having to think about doing it the right way. So if he fixes these things, and he's trying to, if he can get to the point where he's not thinking about it, he can be the number one receiver in this class. If he never gets it right, and it just continues he just gives up and is like, I've made it, I'm going to do the best I can. Well, he's going to be like a number 3 receiver who gets matched up in a way like Kenny Galladay or Gabriel Davis a year ago, or players like that who, if Chase Claypool, you throw the ball up enough, maybe they'll do something well with 1 or 2 catches. Fantasy players will love it for the week that they get it, and then he'll go 3 weeks where the ball's claying off his hands, and half the fan base get tired of him with it before his contract's over. And so I'm hoping that where I have him right now, he's at a range where he's just under being an immediate starter, but I'm giving him credit that he's making the effort to get better and that it'll eventually get there. But I think there's a trap door that it never gets there, and he winds up being really just a contributor and not a starter.
Yeah. Well, AJ's got the RSP in front of us on his laptop, and I purposely didn't see it until today. So I thought, I wonder how many Matt got wrong this year. I don't want to say. We'll talk about
the
that.
Annual tradition.
We'll see how we. But one of the guys that AJ did put it up, and at number 2, you have my guy at number 2, and that's Zay Flowers.
Yeah.
So I was so interested in him, just the way he plays. To me, he's the most dynamic mover on at this whole class. So I went back and watched it. It was 2019. Something called like the Cowboys Open Day. There's a bit on YouTube about it, and he makes a cut. His feet go from underneath him. They're on that AstroTurf. All the black rubber comes up. He puts his hand down, and he still continues to make the cut at the same speed. It's like he didn't lose anything by slipping over. And I said, mate, and this is 4 years ago. So he's probably just coming out of high school.
Yeah. And
he hasn't lost anything. He's obviously become a better route runner, and he plays taller than he does. How did you see him? I just think he's one of the most polished guys in this class that you can, if you're going to give someone who's you could rely on to take, if in fantasy, he'd be one of the 2 guys.
I think he's very good at using his speed and his footwork and understanding of coverage position to manipulate defenders well, to set up routes. So he's very good at setting up routes. I think he's one of the 3 best route runners in the class, because he can manipulate space well against defenders, not only one defender, but even multiple defenders, whether it's a high-low coverage or kind of side by side. So he's going to be a problem in zone coverage. That's for sure. After the catch, obviously, you described it. Don't really need to get in any more detail with that. He does clap attack sometimes. And so
a lot of them do, Matt. Did you know? Like I've written down here. Oh, we got another case of someone who's got the clap.
Yeah. Pretty much. It's basically it's an epidemic throughout this class. It's like they have the same coach who gave it to them. They're
all down at Fort Lauderdale at the same time.
Exactly. I don't know who the coach was at the opening, but obviously they needed to inoculate this coach. We'll just put it that way. But he has great. Even though there's some clap attacking there, he does have great spatial awareness against tight coverage. It's not as much of a serial issue with him as it is, say, with Quentin Johnston. So I like that in terms of that he can track the ball, he can use the correct hands positions. When I compare him to somebody you mentioned earlier, just when you mentioned about previous classes, to me, he's kind of in that sphere of Jalen Waddle being the guy that he's aspiring to be.
Okay.
I don't think he's as explosive as Waddle. I don't think he's as good in tight coverage as Waddle, but I also don't think he leaps unnecessarily like Waddle seems to be doing with the Dolphins. And then there's another player that he reminded me of who's about the same size, who came out of Memphis years ago, around the time when Junior was still playing up there, and that's Isaac Bruce. There's definitely some reminders to me of Isaac Bruce in terms of how he moves after the catch, how he plays as a route runner. So I'm a fan. He's certainly, he is certainly one of the top guys in this class, and I think that he's going to make an impact early.
Yeah.
Nice.
Did you find this class? I said to AJ, I said, I found this class to be a lot of, which is not like Juju Smith-Schuster type guys.
Yeah.
And Jarvis Landry type players in this. There's a stack of them. Like that sort of player on that level. Like you're never going to, they're not good enough to be a number one on their own. They're always going to be a really good number two or number, and I just found this class was more Juju sort of like everything, like size-wise, route running, just across the board. I'm looking.
There's a lot of slot flanker hybrids kind of in this class.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing that underwhelms people because they're like, this class isn't so good. But if we were to say that there were, instead of there being like 3 really great guys in the class and a bunch of like so-so guys who don't pan out after 5 years, if we were to say there were 9 guys who will have a career that's like either Juju Smith-Schuster, a lower end Michael Thomas, or Jarvis Landry, you'd be pretty stoked about that class at the end.
Yeah.
I think that's what's weird about this class.
Yes, without it. Now, 2 players I want to look at that I watched back to back, and they're both out of Tennessee, and everybody's talking about Jalen Hyatt. Speed. Yeah, mate, I've fallen. Like, I've actually got over my 6'4" type guy love affairs. It's 6'4". I've learnt my lesson over a number of years. So I looked at Jalen Hyatt, and then I looked at Cedric Tillman, who people aren't as high on. I'm going, how do you not have Cedric Tillman ahead of Jalen Hyatt? Just to me, he's the guy that Tillman's the guy that I want playing on my team because I know he's going to do what I asked him to do. He's going to do the heavy lifting. He's the blue collar. He's going to go down the bloody mine every day, work his ass off for his family to put food on the table. Where Jalen Hyatt to me is he if you ask him what do you do for a job, mate, you get those people. I'm an entrepreneur. What the fuck is an entrepreneur?
He's a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah. So how do you view where people have these 2 guys head to head at the moment? Because mate, give me Cedric Tillman every day of the week because mate, he just do that crossing. He's going to do all the hard work. He's a physical guy. He's got a good set of hands. Mate, give me that dude. Then the flash. Every now and then he's going to run down the field really fast and get past somebody.
Yeah, well, there's a couple things here. First, I agree with you wholeheartedly about Cedric Tillman. And part of it is he's a very good intermediate route runner. He's going to give you the sharp flat breaks against man coverage. I think that's something that he's going to get better at. Like it's there. It's going to grow. He's going to grow into that. He's good against zone. He's a good contested catch guy. He's fast enough. The short area acceleration and short area quickness are really the strengths of his game. And that's more important than speed. Because when we talk about Jalen Hyatt, the big thing that's missing with him is not what he doesn't. We don't know whether he can do it. And so when you look at a guy like Jalen Hyatt, when you look at his film, I have not seen an instance in 2 seasons of him winning a contested catch. I'm not talking like getting hit going across the middle. He's able to do that. I'm talking about working a vertical route where it's a back shoulder play or a leap between two defenders on a post or anything where he's had to earn position and the coverage is tight to him. He's earned position on back shoulders where the defender completely overruns him and he's wide open as he turns to make the catch. I've seen those. But until you see proof of that, you can't give a guy credit for doing it. People do, but you're projecting something that really isn't. There's good grounds to do that. So he has never shown that. He's in a Baylor offense where a lot of Baylor receivers, didn't really do very well in the NFL because it's a very limited offense in terms of the type of routes that they're running. It exploits speed. And speed, as I've often said for years, is the cleavage of NFL evaluators.
I'm a Batman now. It's not working for me.
Yeah, it's the type of thing where they're interviewing, they're watching the tape, and they're going, this guy's got, I really have no business hiring this guy, but he's so fast. And they it just completely blinds their process to doing anything else where you want to go, keep the eyes on like the skills, stop watching the feet moving fast because at the end of the day, listen, Henry Ruggs, Ted Ginn, there are a number of players like this that, Ted Ginn had a long career, but he was a second-round draft pick. If you look at his annual statistics every year, there weren't many seasons during that long career that you would say that was second-round production value out of him, And I think that's what happens is that there's still this old school idea that, well, if you give them, it's like quarterbacks. If they have speed at receiver, we can teach them the rest of everything else, even though the NFL doesn't teach anything other than game plan.
Receivers I heard you talking about that
on their own.
Yeah, you were talking about that on one of your pods, which was really interesting. But we're here to get you up to the play, so where you have to be. We're not here to totally rejig your whole game.
Yeah, that's on them to do. And if they don't do it, they find someone else who is going to do the work and work on it. So it's like Hyatt has a lot more to show. Like he could be very helpful to an offense. He will probably even give fantasy value to people, especially if he's couched between two really good receivers who do run great routes, and they can do the whole Kenny Galladay, let's put him in the middle of the field against a safety and completely exploit matchups where there's, it's completely easy. And then, and then 3 years from now, some team goes, he could be a number one receiver for us. Let's sign him to a huge contract. And he can't do anything other than do what happened before. And so Tillman, much more to me, is one of the most reliable receivers in the class. There's some minor issues with changing the direction where you want to see him keep his feet a little bit better. But I think he's one of those plus possession boundary receivers like Mike Williams of the Chargers, or a plus version, maybe even a plus version of Corey Davis, where Corey Davis, what people thought Corey Davis was going to be, but he never quite got there after a slow start being in a moribund Tennessee offense with Marcus Mariota as his quarterback. I mean, that's kind of like blind leading the vision impaired, so, that didn't really help out well. But I think Tillman to me, it feels like a safer, productive player who makes the plays that you would expect. Hyatt's the player where very exciting, a lot of unproven things, and probably will be placed in a role where if people are thinking that he's going to be Tyreek Hill, then they've fallen for we need to get people to watch the Tennessee Volunteers game on CBS, or we need to get, how do we get people to watch this game? Oh, let's compare this receiver to a superstar who he in no way is comparable to.
Yeah. Yeah, and Hyde does the one thing Hill's got going about him. Like, is he the greatest route runner? Well, probably doesn't need to be, but at least he's sharp. Where to me, Hyde is more of the the linear sort of speed guy.
Yeah.
You know, like I'll run around you. I'm not going to make a cut and then accelerate and get past you. I'm just going to run past you basically on a curve, and you keep up with me if you can.
Yeah,
and that's the way I saw it.
Yeah, I mean, he's shifty. He's got some quick and precise footing after the catch.
Yep.
But yeah, he's a guy that's got a lot more to learn, because what they've done is saying, run as fast as you can. We're going to match you up against some people that, even if they try to respect your speed, they're not going to be able to stay with you. And we're going to throw rainbows and you're going to run under them.
Yeah.
Or we're going to give you screens. But that's what's the interesting thing too, is you feed him screens, and it's not like he broke a lot of tackles or made a lot of people miss.
No,
he wasn't very productive on screens, even though, people are thinking, oh, he's going to be Tyreek Hill. Well, if Tyreek Hill were getting the number of screens he did at Tennessee, he probably would have had 25 touchdowns. Jalen Hyatt wasn't even averaging competitive yards after the catch in screen situations.
Like there's a should we talk about Njigba, Jack? But I feel everybody speaks about the same group of people, and what I like when you come on, we speak, Matt. We don't talk about, and especially I've actually given away all my first and second round draft picks in my fantasy leagues just to get out of this class. So I don't have any. I'm not going to get any of these guys. So I'm not interested in them, Matt.
Well, how about we just say this about Njigba?
Yeah.
He's really good.
He is.
He's a really good slot receiver who could be a central part of an offense that revolves around the slot. And he's one of the safest players at the position in this class.
Yeah, and he's not an overly physical guy, and I think you're going to get more. His yard's going to come before the catch, because I don't see he's not taken to the house sort of. That's not his game.
He'll make the first man miss. He
Yep.
might even make the second man miss, because he's very quick, very explosive in the short area. But yeah, he's going to get chased down. And most likely the guys that he's facing will have better angles on him and are better tacklers.
Yeah,
at least
like he's probably going to be the first wide receiver, I'd say, that's going to go in all fantasy on everybody's everybody's list without a doubt. So let's get down to we're going to go way down, Matt, because these are the interesting guys. All right, next, and this is what I like to talk to you about, Matt. Let's get away from there. Let's have a look. Who have we got here? Interesting project. Here we go. Dontarian Wicks, like, is that?
Yeah, you got it.
Out of Virginia,
Dontavian Wicks.
Dontavian Wicks.
Yeah.
I'm putting too many. I'm pronouncing every letter that's in his first name. You probably shouldn't do that, and I should speak to his mum.
Dontavian Wicks.
Yes,
Yeah, that's good.
I know the guy who coaches him, actually.
Okay. A lot of he's got warts. Like a lot of the guys we're going to talk about, Matt, have warts.
Yeah.
But man, they've got pieces to the game that I just think, mate, if you can just get rid of these warts, and the warts that I hope that haven't become the muscle memory sort of type of warts we can't get rid of. I just enjoyed watching him play football. So how did you view him?
He's, I love how athletic he is at the catch point. A lot of big plays against tight coverage. He's tough, acrobatic, really has a great catch radius to get the ball in the extremes of the range that you're looking for. He just has lapses again with the clapping that can lead to some drops that he's not quite a starter as a pass catcher. Like, if he fixes that, his reliability will put him well within that range, if not much higher than that. Like, he could be, an elite pass catcher in this league if he can just fix some of those things. He just has to become far more consistent. But he's,
the game against Louisville was a prime example of just concentrate, mate. Just like he had a number of catches, and that they weren't. I didn't see them as being poor hand. I was just like, mate, you got to concentrate.
Yeah.
Just, you've done everything to the point where you have to catch the football, which is your job, and you've just switched off for a second.
He actually, and as a route runner, it's funny because he actually looked a little better in 2021 than he did in 2022.
Okay.
Like that, he was a little bit less consistent with the flatness of his breaks, but you can see where, you know, his athletic metrics didn't show up as strong in the workouts, but I think that he can become a quicker, maybe even more explosive with downfield speed. He can get a little bit better at that. You know, the guy who coaches him, I've had on my show. His name's Drew Lieberman. He runs a YouTube channel called The Sideline Hustle. He coaches Olamide Zacchaeus in Atlanta, as well as Donald. What's his name? Not Donald Bird. I don't remember the first guy, his first name, but Bird is the receiver for Atlanta as well. And Lieberman's also worked with guys like Mohamed Sanu. I'm trying to think of some other players, Juwan Winfrey, Julian Edelman. So I've learned a lot from Drew, just from his channel and from using a lot of that to apply to how I study wide receivers over the years. And, you know, you have to take with a grain of salt that when you have a guy coaching a player, they're going to talk him up to a degree.
Yep.
But, you know, Drew was really excited about him, and he doesn't talk about all his players, you know. So he was excited about him. Feels like that this guy could become a starter one day. And from what you and I both seen, you can see that there's glimpses of what he could become. It's just becoming more precise with the route and breaks and the catching techniques. And if he can do that,
it's the killer on my list.
Yeah, because if he doesn't do that, he's the guy who's the reserve at the end of the depth chart who occasionally makes big plays. Fans are like, we got to get him on the field more. And when he does, then he drops everything. He can't get open. He's not reliable. And you know, but if he can continue to become consistent because he's really shoring up the issues, then those big plays, he's going to make the little plays and the big plays.
Okay, so we'll move it we'll go a level or so above. I just written on here, am I falling for another Mims? And that's my little note in the top right-hand corner because I feel that I'm falling for another Mims, and that's Marvin this year. Like, is
he related? Is he related?
Is he related? Yeah, is he related? Well, he's not nowhere near as tall as his brother, if it's his brother or his cousin or whatever. He's only 5'11", where I think Mims is 6'4" or whatever he might be, 6'5".
I'm still a believer in Marvin Mims. I'm not Marvin Mims, but in Denzel Mims. I still think he can be an excellent player. I just think that he's kind of got a raw deal with the Jets in terms of everything that happened. But Marvin, you go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, no, I was going to say about Denzel is that, I don't understand. You throw the ball to the guy 3 times in a game and he catches all 3 balls and 2 of them are contested, and yet you don't throw to him again. Like, I don't understand. Every time you throw the ball, he catches the goddamn thing. What? That's his job.
Welcome to New York.
Is he getting separation? Well, no, that's not his gig.
Yeah. No,
I agree. He's had a bit of the raw prawn.
I'll say this: when you complain and ask to be traded, and then they showcase you in a game in the preseason, and you look like the best player on the field at that moment, because they're like, okay, big shot, let's see what you can do. Are you going to screw this up? And he's like, looks good, and then they're like, no, we're keeping him, but we're going to keep him on the bench.
We're not going to use him.
Yeah, we're not going to. I could think of at least 12 teams that could use him, and he would be an immediate starter and probably be an 800 to 1,000 yard receiver on those teams. I mean, that to me, if you ask me, the Minnesota Vikings could have used him now that they got rid of Adam Thielen with him alongside Justin Jefferson. Are you kidding me? So, but anyway, Marvin Mims.
Yep.
To me, he's Derek Mason was a terrific player with the Tennessee Titans and Baltimore Ravens. Had a long career, started as a kick returner, but really good deep threat in the NFL for a while, who could also run intermediate routes and win after the catch. And Marvin Mims reminds me of a guy who's, Mason's that aspirational player for him. I think he could start this year if in the right situation, I think he'll probably be a guy who gets rotated in, and increasingly so to the point that he becomes a favorite, or the quarterback, the team becomes excited about him. He has excellent hands. I think
I love the way when he goes up for the ball, he squares his shoulders to the quarterback. He's not trying to catch it to one side or twist. He's every cat, mate, and he falls flat on his back. Mate, well, that's because I did the right thing. I squared my shoulders to the ball, and that's what makes him a really good go up and contested catcher of football.
And he has great range with doing it. If he needs to make the dynamic extension, he can do that. I think he's someone who's not very flashy after the catch as a runner, but he does make a lot of wise and timely decisions. And I think, he's competent at a lot of the route work that you need to see right now, in terms of, his releases, his stems, his breaks. He's going to get better at a lot of the things. There's little details that maybe needs to get better in terms of adding more techniques and manipulation techniques to his game. But what he does right now, he does well. And that's something to build on. So
that's what I liked about him. He has a lot of these guys. There's a lot of guys that they have the bait, that some of them have, like, you can see the bait. You've got what we need at the basic level, and you're going to improve the more you're around guys that will take you to another level. You know what I mean? And that's what I like about him. You can see, mate, he's got room to improve, but I really like the areas that he's got down pat at the moment.
Yeah. Marvin Mims to me is the last guy in my first tier of guys that I think they're going to be starters. They're going to be players that you want going. And then there's a big landmine and Quentin Johnston right below him, starting off tier 2.
Yeah. Oh, we might have one right this year.
Yeah, mate. Good.
We got going. Another guy that I found interesting was Trey Palmer out of Nebraska, but I think he had another year of eligibility to go back, and he came out. And I just wrote that maybe another year would have helped him if he had stayed, because he's another guy. He's got a few warts that I think if he had played another year, that, like, I don't know what his QB situation was going to change. I don't know, and he didn't want to be there anymore or whatever. I thought, well, just this class is probably, if I'm going to come out, maybe next year's class is going to be too good. Now, these guys got to make all those type of decisions, I guess. But he's another one, just a really interesting. He has some really good fundamentals sort of set already. And there's still there's improvement, but I can see that if he makes the improvement, he could be like, he's never going to be, he could be a really good number 3 sort of guy for a team.
So I think this is one that I'm just going to get so wrong, because I just can't get with you on Palmer.
That's all right.
Yeah.
So that's why Palmer, I said he should have stayed another year in school. Would have helped him.
The ideal thing that could have happened is that Nebraska could have enrolled him in a course that, for credit, maybe even just a 1 credit hour course, with fellow alum at Nebraska, Quincy Enunwa, former New York Jet, who used to catch the ball in Nebraska, trying to catch it like this. I've literally seen him. I'm crossing my hands at the wrist with the backs of my hands flapping together like a duck that had its neck broken. Okay. So he used to do that, trying to catch the ball. Now, his everything from basically the hand away from the hands looked like the next Terrell Owens, but from the hands, but when it came to the hands, it was like no chance. Now, he spent a lot of time for about 2 years working on his hands every day away from practice, and actually became a competent pass catcher. But then he had a neck injury that pretty much derailed his career. And he looked like he was about to come into his own to be a really good contributor for the Jets. Trey Palmer, rampant issues with catch technique from what I saw. He not only clapped on the targets with his hands, but he used the high-low kind of like the gator kind of clapping.
No, you showed me one receiver in this class, Matt, that doesn't do that, though.
Oh, I will.
Okay, there we go. It's going to get fiery now.
And Jigba, is a good example.
Okay, I'll give you one. We'll give you one.
Okay, I'll give you a few more, but like there were guys in my top 8. That's what I'm saying. There's a lot, but you're right. There are a lot of guys, and doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that's the death knell, because again, a lot of guys in the NFL clap attack targets, but there's certain things that they like. If you clap attack where your hands are just a little too wide apart, and then you're clapping clapping together, that happens all the time in the NFL.
Yep.
When you're coming up for the ball and your hands are in a different direction and you look like a little boy or a little girl with a big beach ball, and you go,
oh, there's a
and
gif
the ball hits you in the face.
The gif with the girl throwing the ball, and just I know the one about. Yeah.
When you see those are a little more concerning. Those are more on the Gabriel Davis end of the spectrum, where you're going to be a 50%, catch rate guy, and you're going to need Josh Allen to give you easy throws downfield to win a lot of those balls. That becomes a little more problematic. And then when you're doing the Gator mascot thing, trying to catch a ball, that's even harder to try and do. So Trey Palmer, great open field runner, physical, and even though he drops some balls, he does make some catches that are tough catches, even with the clapping. Like
that must have been the games I was watching.
Yeah, he gets hit in the chest, hits in the back, hard hits, winds up with the ball. But there's just so much of that with his game. And then he needs to be a little sharper coming in and out of breaks. He drifts out of breaks enough that, so there's things he's got to work on. And I'm just worried that the degree in which he doesn't the degree that he has technical problems with catching the ball, I think are going to get in the way of him being a NFL starter. But hey, look, this is that thing. If he can fix it, the athletic ability's there.
Yeah. Well, you're wrong on Christian Watson not being number one, Matt. But some of them had number one. That's okay. We're just saying
that's okay. We're all right. I didn't didn't recommend him or anything. So.
Okay, we'll see if we can find somebody else we can disagree with, Matt. This is good though. It's good.
It's healthy.
It's great. It's great. As long as you respect me and I respect your opinion, we're all good.
Yeah, that's what makes it fun.
Well, you don't find it these days, Matt. It doesn't happen very often. No one respects people's opinion.
Oh, I hear that. I hear that a lot.
It's just,
hey, I don't know. I don't seem to have that problem with folks. So
while you're looking, G, I'll ask a question.
Yeah, please.
I was going to say, just as an aside, I enjoyed the Queen's Gambit reference in your. I was going to say, see, I've read all 1163 pages. I'd be lying. You've probably got lots of other little sneaky references in there, I'm sure, but I enjoyed that. That was quite good. So it must be in ways kind of heartbreaking because like the RSP is like a snapshot in time, and and then you've got the post-draft RSP, and that again is a snapshot in time. But then like after that, who knows what happens, because like players can let you down because they just don't work hard enough or whatever. But then often, players will be drafted to teams where the situation is just a complete mismatch. And, you in your heart, you'll see it and you'll say, oh my goodness, I can't believe. And so, it must be in ways a little bit heartbreaking if we sort of think about some of these players as sort of like your babies, it must be sometimes a little bit heartbreaking. It was sort of, I was going to say, they actually mentioned Denzel Mims, but, are there players like in the last 1 or 2 years that you've sort of thought, your heart just sort of bleeds for the situation that they've sort of landed in?
Yeah, Trey Sermon, the running back for
of course, yes,
with the 49ers, and what happened there is just because Kyle Shanahan is an excellent offensive mind, okay, but West Coast offensive coaches, as good as they are with the scheme and the X's and O's and how original they are with everything, tend to be a little ego attached to that scheme, to the point that if you ask quarterbacks around in the league, they'll tell you that West Coast offensive coaches, especially good ones, can sometimes view the players as pixels or little characters in a video game, and they are the ones at the control, you know. And Kyle Shanahan, kind of, when you look at him, I think the way they look at running backs is before McCaffrey, because with McCaffrey, he can do pretty much everything. But before that, they were just thinking, you know what? We can get a fast guy who doesn't really set things up well, doesn't really diagnose things well, and we can just say, don't worry with wide zone, don't worry about the cutback, just run to this direction. We've got a great O-line, just hit it hard. And with Sermon, I heard a good argument that what happened is that they liked him because he was a very nuanced runner with good decision making. But they thought, well, because he has so much nuance like that, we can just tell him to turn that off and he can just hit this crease hard and not think about it. But you're asking someone whose game is based on cutbacks and setting up and patience to do something that, you know, that he wasn't as used to. So I kind of hated that for him. I actually think another guy that I kind of feel that way about, though, he certainly has his share of drops as well, but they're concentrated Shinoриan drops. He's playing in the XFL right now, is Hakeem Butler. When you look at Hakeem Butler, he's starring in the XFL right now, but he got stuck with the Cardinals. And if you look at the disaster that the Cardinals have been with Cliff Kingsbury, it's like he didn't even get a shot. And so to me, that's an issue, though. So do the 49ers need a big guy on the outside?
Mate, this is Ben. You really?
Question.
You made this. It's the it's a wide receiver question.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that
not in this class.
Probably not in this class. I think it could be helpful, but really, what they probably need is George Kittle to stay healthy. They probably need some consistency at the quarterback position, because you know they nearly won a Super Bowl if it weren't for Jimmy Garoppolo basically turtling at the end of the game, which is kind of what his hallmark has been under pressure. He's a good but not great quarterback.
Right.
Okay, we're going to throw one up to Matt. This is gonna. You're going to be ready for this one, Matt. This is you're going to think, man, bloody Greg's really done his homework. I actually got a book. So I'm not looking through pages. I wrote everything in a book for the first time
without an index.
If I had an index, would help.
See, look at before you had notes and like, did you just
going through
that were just all over the couch and everything.
Okay. This is how I pronounce.
My dog would have eaten all of them.
Is it Keelan Harris at Oklahoma Baptist?
He's fun.
How does someone like him? How does he end up? It might be because that's where he wanted to go. I don't know. But how does a bigger school, I don't know what he's like coming out of high school, not see something in someone like him? Because, mate, he's quick. I don't think anybody in this class catches the ball and turns up field quicker and one step and he's gone. You know what I mean? Like, as soon as the ball's in the hand, he puts it away and he's turned around and he's gone. Like, how do they not see something in someone like him? He's not the biggest guy, 5'11", 185. He's not the smallest guy in this class, and who are playing at some really good schools. He's fluid. Yeah. Mate, he's got a great change of direction. He's got a safe pair of hands.
He might actually be a bit shorter than that, G, because I think you've got him as 5'9", Matt.
I've got him 5'9".
Yeah.
Okay, I just got it off. I have to speak to the NFL. This was off their site.
Yeah, well, so there you go.
Well, there you go.
So he's 5'9". Okay, 5'9".
Well, I mean,
it'd be 5'11".
The joke about your first part of it was like maybe he wanted to go there. The answer would be that, if you know Baptist down here in the South, the answer would be the Jesus. The Jesus is the reason that happened. Yeah. But probably to be more serious about it is that players fall through the cracks through, with recruiting for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's due to the fact that a lot of higher end recruits are guys who have the NFL, or they've already gained their man weight and size at an early stage. So they already look like they could potentially be NFL players early on. So wide receivers who are 6'1", 6'2", 6'4", 200 plus pounds, those guys they look at and say, okay, they already have some of that speed and the acceleration. They're looking for guys to contribute early, so they're considered top prospects. Kind of like when you're in school and you're in those pre-adolescent, early adolescent years, and the kids in your school develop early, and they, the 13-year-old who already has a mustache and he's already like 5'11" and 170 pounds, and then 3 years later he's still 5'11", 170 pounds, and there was a guy who was 5'3", 95, and now he's 6'7" and 250. Those things happen. So Carson Wentz, especially quarterbacks, Carson Wentz, Aaron Rodgers. Carson Wentz wasn't even 6 feet tall when he was out of high school, and he had a huge growth spurt. So growth spurts can be part of it. Grades can be part of it. That the guy may not have had great grades, so he couldn't get recruited by the Division I schools and had to start off at a smaller program. There could have been disciplinary issues. There could have been it could have been things like that. Sometimes it can be things like what I just experienced. There's a family member, and I won't say who it is, but a family member of mine had a friend who was a quarterback in Atlanta who was a 6'4", 195-pound quarterback who won basically the district's player of the year based on the coaches voting. But he was a mobile runner of a quarterback. He had a decent arm. He was getting coached up by, a prominent coach outside of the high school system. But the high school coach wanted to use a quarterback who was a pocket quarterback and, more of a pocket passer. And they decided to have a competition. And the younger kid who was the pocket quarterback won the competition.
Yep.
And then the first half of the first game, he was so bad that the coach was forced to put in the guy who lost the competition, who promptly became the district player of the year and led their team to the playoffs. So the coach, from what, and I don't know for sure, but from the accounts that I heard, basically just didn't like this kid. And the kid was considered a leader and did a great job and all of those things, but the coach probably felt like he had some egg on his face because how sometimes you have high school coaches who think that they're they look at this as if they're this is the most important things in their lives. Maybe they're just not happy at home. Maybe they're whatever it is, they've approached this as if they're a deity in their own little space. And so this kid didn't get recruited, and so, I was able to kind of help out with some people I know and just say, how do I help this kid get some exposure late in the game through this, and so that he can do it on his own merit, but how can he go about presenting himself in a good way because he's not getting presented at school? They weren't allowing, people weren't meeting with him, and the coaching staff wasn't basically, promoting him to have meetings with other players, with other coaches that were coming through. So, he ended up getting signed, and that worked out well for him to start off. But those things happen in these environments. And I think that's probably what happened with Harris. But Harris, like you said, everything you described about him, wouldn't disagree with that at all. I think he's a compelling player. The biggest question is, will it hold up against top talent that's there? And he went to the Tropical Bowl, which is the all-star game against Division caliber, Division I caliber athletes, maybe not high-end guys, all of them, but he dominated there. In the event. And there are a lot of coaches that felt like he they called him Hollywood during the week. And I have to think that's a little bit of a reference to Hollywood Brown. So if he can deliver a little bit like Marquise Brown, that would be, that could be a coup for a team.
So he'd probably go undrafted, but he'll get somewhere on a practice squad, and hopefully then, Matt, he can show. And like I said, how do we know? Like he's because of where he's playing, we have no idea what he can do. Because then you get someone like Jaden Hazelwood, who was a 5-star recruit, like the guy coming out of high school in the country, and just completely, pretty much flopped. And when I watched his film, I'm thinking this guy was a number, because probably in high school he was the guy you were talking about. He was already 6'2", 200 pounds. He's the biggest kid out there. No one could stop him. No one wanted to tackle him. He was 3 inches, 4 inches taller than all the corners he was playing on. Then you step up a level and you get found out.
Yeah, and you're not particularly explosive in terms of long speed. You've got some short area speed, but that's about it.
Yeah, I thought he's really quite pedestrian off the line. Even when you can see, like, you have to work out, he doesn't look that quick, but he might not be running a route where he has to be quick. He's just got to be in a certain spot or take away a defender from a certain area. But then when you can see when, okay, now he thinks this ball's coming to him. Yeah. Even then he wasn't like, well, geez, he didn't really step the speed up at all. That was what I was watching was his speed.
Yeah, as an athlete, he's an aspiring Juju Smith-Schuster playing at about 2/3, 3/4 speed.
Yes.
So
yeah. Who else we got here?
I'll answer this real quick while you're looking at question. I mean, is the art of pocket quarterback dying away in college football? It's a great question. With all this, but I would say the answer is that pocket quarterback play is just one of the toughest things to be able to do, is being able to move around and maneuver in the pocket and make strong plays where you're manipulating with your eyes and moving with efficiency, because good pocket quarterback play is about efficiency of movement, not necessarily dynamic movement. Like efficient movement in the pocket. You can look at Lamar Jackson. He makes very small little steps, keeps his feet under his shoulders, even though everybody wants to describe him like he's Kyler Murray, who as soon as he sees a flash of pressure, Kyler Murray sticks the ball out behind him like this, drops his head, and then makes a move that's like unbelievably dynamic. But now his receivers have to reroute. He has to reset his feet, and then he has to do it 3 more times because there's not enough space for him to spend all that time after he got away. He runs to every spot. He's just very inefficient. A lot of quarterbacks that they're recruiting in college, if they're more like Kyler Murray, then you're going to have more often problems that lean in that direction. But at the end of the day, I agree with a guy like Craig Cosell who would say, at the end of the day, you have to win from the pocket. That's not saying that running quarterbacks aren't any good. It means that if you're a quarterback who can run well, you still have to move efficiently from the pocket to win. Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, they're both examples of guys who did that very well. Steve McNair, great runner way back in the day, could do that well from the pocket. Those guys understand that. And that's where we get a little too simplistic, where we go, oh, well, the Kyler Murrays are going to take over. No, the Kyler Murrays are going to do what Kyler Murray's doing right now, which is he's a really talented player who's catching some heat in the background and maybe a little bit more in the media now because, people worry about maybe he's a whiner, maybe he complains about things, maybe he's not such a leader, maybe he needs to focus on his own game rather than pointing fingers at other people. Maybe he should stop talking about what the team was asking him to do with the clause with his contract and actually work on the things that can make him a better player. And if he did that, then none of this would be going on. But I look at it that way. And to me, the complaints I have with him aren't about the things that the media is complaining about him. It's the things that I see, like he doesn't function well in the pocket. And if he can
fix hard when that, you can't see over the top of it, Matt.
Yeah, exactly.
He's working between the creases, basically.
Yeah, but most quarterbacks do. It's just that the difference is most quarterbacks say, "Okay, let's move over to the next crease." He's more like, "Let me do something that a Chinese gymnast would do," and then try and look. And by that point, now you're drawing these 4-second plays, 3 or 4 second plays into 7 and 8 second plays. And then when you hit one of them, everybody's like, see, look how awesome that is. Nobody can do that.
He can
And you're
extend
like,
the play. Yeah,
great. Yeah, he did that once in a loss to a team that, they lost by 21 points and he scored one touchdown off of that. How about those 8 plays that he could have had an easy solution to if he had done that right, where that may have helped them sustain a drive, and now they're winning by 3. And he could have had 5 games like that.
Yeah. I'm surprised no one's come up with a gif of putting his head on Benny Hill's body at the end of the Benny. Do you ever watch the Benny Hill show?
I grew up watching it, which says a lot about my childhood, probably.
Oh, mate, it was great. It was the only time you get to see some women with basically
speed.
Nothing on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And mate, if someone hasn't put like his head on top of Benny Hill and with the music in it and just send that gif out. That's a perfect example of what's
you need to
going on.
do it, man. You need to do it.
If
you don't, I will, and I'll credit you.
Okay. All right. Let's see if I can get this one. This guy's got. I thought this guy had some really good set of hands, Matt. So we'll see if we can get at least one of these guys. And that's Grant. Is it Debussy? Is that how you pronounce his last name?
Oh, I don't know, but let's say Dubose.
Dubose.
Yeah.
Dubose. Okay.
Yeah. Most likely.
I just wrote down so much upside for a guy that's only a 2-year starter. And I said, mate, in my draft, I will be, because I've given away my first and second picks in all because it was just made sense. I didn't need running backs. He's definitely someone that he's there at my pick in the third. I'm going to grab him in, not leaving the draft, especially in fantasy drafts, obviously, without him, and see what happens. And sit him on my, what is it? What's that? Taxi squad.
Listen, this is why you grade my receiver picks, because this is it right here. I look at Grant Dubose and I think he's one of the most underrated receivers in this draft. I think he's kind of a quiet gem in this class. For very consistent. He's physical, catches the ball well. Really understands how to get downfield. He can break tackles, make people miss. Has kind of a runner's feel that you want to see in traffic or in the open field. He makes contested plays. I think he's a decent route runner who's only going to get better. And I have him listed as a rotational starter by grade right now. I mean, there's not much of a difference between, say, him and a guy like A.T. Perry out of Wake Forest that a lot of people think is going to be a second or third round pick. I think Grant Dubose in the NFL's draft, I think Grant Dubose could be really one of the top 8 to 10 receivers in this class. And I've joked that he's in that tier with all the landmines. But if I were to predict where the landmines blow up, Grant Dubose would be the guy standing in the middle of the mine-strewn field without like a bit of shrapnel has even scratched him. He might have a nick. His jersey might be torn a little bit, but he's the guy I would navigate towards through that minefield.
I thought some of his catches and his hand placement on some of his catches, Matt, that weren't good throws, but you couldn't get more textbook of him trying to put his hands in the right spot to catch the football off his hip, wrong shoulder. His technique was still the hand placement.
So wait a minute. Can we name a second player now?
Can we name a second? Yeah.
Who does? He has a slight clap with some overhand stuff, but that's it. Yeah, I'm with you though.
Yeah, but I thought it was great. Like some of the casting, that is a really good hand placement for where your quarterback threw the football. Like
I love when I can get one on a legal person, some legal people. So.
I mean, look, he ran what it was at the combine, a 4.57.
Yeah,
but that's not his game.
No,
it's not his game. And I wrote down here some of his mid-air adjustments to balls are sick.
Yeah,
which is crazy.
He's a reliable possession receiver. His 20 shuttle is a 4.32, which is starter value. His 6.89 3-cone is elite. That's anything below 7 is really strong. And he jumps 35-inch vertical. So he can get off the line. He's going to get early separation. He's going to win basically between 5 and 20 yards down the field. He's going to move the chains for you, get a little bit more. And if you get him off play action or, and he can get behind someone early on play action, he's going to be able to get deep and stay deep. He'll work in the red zone well. To me, Reggie Wayne is the guy that is probably the standard at that type of a role. And I think Grant Dubose is trying to get to that neighborhood. He may be a zip code over, but he's good.
Now that you brought up a Wayne, can we talk about his nephew?
Yeah.
He's another one that I wouldn't mind. I'll grab him, in my fantasy draft. He'd probably fall to maybe the 3rd or the 4th round. People don't know much about him. I'll stick him on my taxi squad and see what's that. Because I found him, mate.
How many rounds do your fantasy drafts have?
4.
Then you can get him in the 4th rounder and off waiver.
You're not a fan, mate?
No, I think that my thought is this: if he can become more reliable with intermediate routes and make the difficult catches that are expected using a little bit more sustainable technique, I think he's the type of player who right now my grade on him is low, but what I've written is monitor him from afar, but be aware that his receiving and route running skills could be improved fast enough that by next year he could be 4th or 5th on a depth chart and then moving into a rotational starter's role within a couple more years after that. I think he's got a legitimate upside to become a lot better than what I have graded for him. But he's low on my list, but he's that guy that I've pointed out to people that agrees with you on that level. There's something there.
And I think a lot of it, I'm watching it, I'm going, mate, he's open. He's open. And where the hell is his QB? What are you looking at, mate? Like, seriously, he's one of the better receivers on his team, and the guy's not even looking in his direction, and he's wide open.
Well, there is a barbecue joint in South Alabama called Dreamland, and I wouldn't recommend going there, to be honest with you, compared to the other places you could go. So maybe he had maybe his pregame meal is something from Dreamland, and he's eyeing that outhouse on the sideline. I don't know.
Oh, okay, is that what he's looking at? Yeah. He's dating one of the cheerleaders or something. He's looking the wrong side of the field.
That too.
A guy that I've just written down here, mate, he's just a possession receiver, and he could make a very good living out of this, is Ronnie Bell out of Michigan.
Yeah, I like him too.
Yeah, just quick first. I just write this slot guy, sells his routes well. He's quick and smart within like the small areas of the field. That's what he's going to be. He's just going to be the guy that gets, all his points are going to come from how many catches he makes during the game.
Yeah, I think if Grant Dubose gets that house in the starter neighborhood that's not far down the street from Jalen from Reggie Wayne, I think that Ronnie Bell's the guy who just missed getting the opportunity to see the house. And after he looked it up online and realized that he talked to an agent, and they said, "Sorry, it's been sold.
It's already gone."
Now he's got to scramble to move somewhere else. At that point. But he's looking for he's a solid player, good special teamer, good blocker, someone that can run after the catch. And again, Michigan is known for being a team that doesn't allow these receivers to maybe exploit them in the manner where they get the most out of their games. Both receivers and tight ends, Nico Collins and Donovan Peoples-Jones, have kind of shown that over the past couple of years. Maybe Ronnie Bell does too. I don't think he's quite on the level of those two guys.
Okay,
But yeah, I think he can make a team and be a contributor at some point.
Okay. A guy that a lot of people he's sort of weighed out of contention with people at the top end of the wide receiving market is someone that I heard you are still a fan of. This Kayshon Boutte.
Yeah.
Did I pronounce that right?
I think so. I've been asking the same thing every time I say his last name. Yeah.
So it's someone that you're a bit higher on. He sort of dropped off people's radars a little bit over the past 12 months or so, Matt. But
yeah, because they looked. Number one is that he didn't perform to their expectation at LSU last year. They expected him to become a primary receiving star, and because he had strong production the year before, they were like, he dropped off, so he's not quite as good. So they were expecting him to be like the next Jamar Chase. Okay, Jamar Chase plays from the slot in Cincinnati a lot, but he's really an outside split end who can play all three positions, and he's the best receiver of the past 3 years, if you ask me, of coming out of a class. And I'm tired of people trying to say that Higgins is as good or better than him. That's like, I like T. Higgins a lot, but let's please have some sense, okay? Kayshon Boutte is a slot receiver who can play a little bit of flanker. On top of that, he apparently, I think he got in a little bit of trouble earlier in his career. Then there was some rumor he had a misdemeanor charge for carrying a gun without a license. Was a $500 fine and a misdemeanor charge. That was what the punishment would have been. I don't know if was convicted of it or not. But again, that was the thing. And then there was some rumor that he missed a game because he and a bunch of other players went to some party that basically was described as a sex party in my town of Atlanta. There you go. But
how come I don't get invited to these things?
I know, right? See, there you go.
Yeah.
But none of that was substantiated. It's hard to say. But what I can tell you is that slot receivers don't generally deliver on the level of what Jamar Chase delivered. The expectation was out of line. Joe Burrow wasn't throwing the ball to or anyone remotely like Joe Burrow was throwing the ball at LSU after that first year. But when you watch his game, and the combine, you looked at the combine, he had a 29-inch vertical, and then all the metrics people scattered for the hills because they saw 29 inches as the metric, and they lost their mind, kind of the same way that they lost their mind with Dalvin Cook as a running back. They all parted for the hills with that. You have to understand how the player plays. And there are some really good players who don't play in the air. They play on the ground. And what they do technique-wise is compensatory for whatever it is that they're lacking with that vertical explosion. And there are two receivers in the recent years who've been really good, who had 29-inch verticals, who were around 5'11", 190, 195, who people were kind of down on more. 1 year they liked this guy Marquise Lee a whole lot, and that Robert Woods guy was okay, but then he went to Buffalo and kind of got forgotten about. And next thing you know, he had about 3 or 4 seasons with LA that were really strong. And Robert Woods is one of those guys. Like if you look at Kayshon Boutte, he and Robert Woods don't have a lot of differences in terms of dimensions or metrics, as well as what they can do over the middle as route runners and what they do after the catch. Kayshon Boutte makes the first guy miss pretty much guaranteed on almost every play after the catch. And then there's Jarvis Landry, who was even slower. Boutte is more explosive than both these guys.
Oh, he was my favorite coming out.
Yeah.
Like Odell got all the glory, and I just love seeing what I saw from Jarvis.
Yeah. Landry's tough, great extension on the ball. Boutte's tough, really good after the catch. He's better in the slot than he will be outside, but you can use him on both. To me, I think he's one of the safest players in this class, even though people are thinking he's one of the riskiest, but they're thinking it for, I think, the wrong reasons. You look at a guy who makes tough grabs. 83% of the plays that I charted in tight coverage, he caught. To me, that's good.
Did you do the FSU game, Matt? Because that's the first one I watched of him, and the first 2 catches that went his way, he dropped both, and then I think he caught one, then he dropped the fourth. I'm going, just not a good start.
The games.
I did write terrible QB. He had terrible QB.
I didn't chart that game. Yep. I charted Auburn in 21, Mississippi State, and Kentucky in 21, and then Tennessee, Florida, and Alabama in 22.
Yep. Okay.
So I'm a fan.
Okay, so we're about just over the hour. So I'm going to give you, I've bloody looked at all these players, Matt, and we're not going to talk about them all, but I'm going to say their name. Just give me a one-word answer, just so I feel that I've accomplished the last 2 months of watching, so I can speak to you, Matt. All right. So we've done Tillman. Let's have a look. Xavier Hutchinson is someone everybody's talking about. Just quickly.
Love. Yes.
Jonathan Mingo is someone I went back and looked at today, and I have to go and have another look after I listen to you talk about him. And it's amazing what you see differently the second time you look at somebody, Matt.
Yep.
So Jonathan Mingo, word.
I'm going to use first and last name, AJ Bolden.
Oh, nice. Rasheed Rice out of SMU. Okay. Everybody's one of the guys that everybody's talking about, but I just thought, yeah, okay. Josh Downs.
Me too. Jamison Crowder.
Jamison Crowder.
Yeah, North Carolina's Jamison Crowder.
Okay. Andre Los
Iosivas?
Yes.
Good question. 18 to 24 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Someone I heard you talk about his hands. I'm gonna have to go have another look at that. Tyler Scott. You can just do the
pretty much. Yeah. But he does. But he catches the ball doing it. I'll say this. Terry McLaurin, hopeful.
Okay.
Nice.
But that's but that would be the second grand exception in history.
Okay. Another guy I need to have a look at after you spoke about Jaden Reed out of Michigan State.
Stud.
Okay.
I must say, I really enjoyed your, was it
A to
like
Z?
A to Z?
That's what I'm trying to do now. It's just, there were some guys you said, yep, you said like 3 words and you moved on. I said, but that's perfect. That is perfect.
That's unusual for me, isn't it?
It was. Nathaniel Dell out of Houston.
Tease you want to take the chance on.
Is it because he's shifty? He's a little shifty little bastard.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Okay.
And he can make incredible catches, but also there's a little bit of the,
Okay. Yeah. We could do that every time, I think, Matt.
Yeah. He's one of the guys with the landmine. Is he quick enough to avoid it?
Okay. Raheem Jarrett out of Maryland.
Intriguing. Intriguing.
I said he's one of the better hand placement catchers in this class.
Yes, I would agree.
And plays a lot taller than 6 foot.
Yeah.
Would that be right?
Special teamer too.
A special team,
mate. He covers punts. He's not even running them back. He's covering them. He's an intriguing player. I think he can be better than where he's going to get drafted.
The one thing I had against him, he struggles to break a tackle. That I had down there. So, but he'll get stronger, and hopefully that Charlie Jones. I just put that like a little note. Just he's a slot guy.
Yeah, he's definitely that.
I put courage. He knows the hit's coming. I think I might have written he's a bit like the Wes. He knows it's coming, mate. I'm still going to go after the football.
He's a fan favorite. Who I think can contribute to a team eventually.
Okay. A.T. Perry.
Light switch needs to become a thermostat.
Yep. Trey Palmer we spoke about. Parker, any of these guys, you just go like that, Matt, if you're not just
swipe left.
Parker Washington out of Penn State.
Great hands. Hines Ward, hopeful, but probably never going to get there.
Okay. Elijah Higgins, I read Matt mentioned he could become a tight end as well. And that's exactly what I wrote down here in orange is move to tight end.
Yeah. Top 5 tight end
Top 5 tight end
class.
There's a couple of guys in this class, Matt, that I think should put on a bit of weight and become a tight end. He's not.
Well, Darren Waller came out as a wide receiver initially.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who picked that one?
Well, you did, G. I know you did, but
just quietly,
memories.
Mate, you got to blow it yourself, Matt, because no one's going to do it for me. I can tell
That's
you.
Right.
Jeray Jenkins at LSU.
XFL hopeful.
I've written down here, chat with Matt. So obviously there's a reason. I haven't got it. Malik Knowles out of Kansas State. Why would I have written that down?
Good yak. Good skills after the catch.
Okay.
Developmental player with worth taking a chance on, I think, for teams, not necessarily fantasy yet.
Right.
Okay. Michael Wilson out of Stanford. I said
everything. Michael
hands
Thomas clone to everything except the hands. If he can get the hands fixed, he's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I said he's got like his grip is strong, but his placement is poor.
Yep.
Would that be right?
Well, hands are kind of important, though.
They
right?
will for a wide receiver.
Yeah.
He's the best route runner in this class.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he hands down best route runner in this class. Great release skills, sudden, strong, good after the catch. Often can make strong catches, but if he doesn't fix those hands, it's just going to be frustrating. If he does, he literally, metrics wise, size wise, route skill wise, he's as close to Michael Thomas as we've seen.
Wow.
Jalen Marino Krupa.
Yeah. Special teams gadget, offensive gadget player who can throw the ball.
Now written up here could become something of an X receiver. Is it Dante Demas Jr.?
Yes.
Out of Maryland, 6'3", 212.
Could be a lot better than he is right now.
Is it because of the injury that he had?
Might be. Hard to say, but he's intriguing. I'll put that.
There was a documentary about him doing his rehab that I watched. Just the school must have put it out. Like one, you can see the dedication these guys that will do anything, and two, these schools have better. They're better than hospital or anything you'll ever see. The equipment that they have is probably you couldn't get it if you had
football programs.
Couldn't have if you had private health insurance.
Yeah,
to the detriment of the classrooms.
Yep. Yeah. Well, when you're making so much money off of these kids, you got to get them healthy as possible so that you can exploit them some more, because that's what they do. I mean, I'm being cynical, and I'm certainly part of
the truth as well.
I'm a fan of football, but at the same time, I think college football is. I'm glad that the NIL deals are here, because it takes them away from being quite as despicable as they've often been, in terms of the hypocrites that they are.
Just before we move, is there some? I talk about this in other facets of sports and life, Matt. Is that we've got to a point now that we know everything. We know about concussion, which is a big thing here in Australia at the moment, because there's a big lawsuit about 100 players, over the last 20 years or whatever. That's about to kick off. Maybe not so much back then, but more so now. What you're going. There's so much information about everything now, Matt, that you to go in with your eyes closed is a little bit like, come on.
It's naive, yeah.
Yeah, it is naive a little bit. Like, it's not all there, but as the athlete, I feel that you have to take some of the responsibility now with everything that we know.
Yeah,
and we'll find out more.
I think the thing with football is similar to what it was like with boxing or other contact sports, is that it may not be as intentional or as conspiratorial as it seems, and then it grows into something where you can connect the dots in that fashion. Is that, sports like these exploit people in margins of society where they don't have a lot of money and don't have a lot of choices. Yes. And players know this. They understand that going into a degree. But how much they understand it also comes down to how many opportunities they do really have, and how much of a structure and support they have around them with mature adults who can deliver the resources and perspective for them to attain that. Because if you throw most 14 to 17-year-olds into this kind of situation, no matter what the background, but not give them the parental support and the structure and the knowledge, they're all going to exhibit behaviors that we see in the worst case scenarios.
Yeah, sure.
Bryce Ford Wheaton. He's another one I said, mate, put on 10 to 12, 20 pounds and just become a tight end.
Well, that would be interesting. I didn't think about that, but I like that idea. Very talented, needs to become more consistent. He's in that Martavis Bryant kind of thing.
Yeah, I just found that I think Martavis has probably got a bit more explosive about his play. And that's what I thought, mate. You're a bit too 6'4", 221. Your speed's not really up there, but as a tight end, well, now we're talking like a bit differently.
You do know Bryce ran a 4.38 40.
He ran a 4.3.
Yes,
I
How
know.
did that not show up on the when I'm watching it?
That's what I was about to say. That's the thing. It did show up on tape. He ran a 4.38 40. He ran a 4.15 20, which is really quick, and a 6.97 3-cone drill, and jumped 41 inches. So
how does that not show up then on film, Matt?
Yeah, part of that is you know, how good you are at reading coverage, how decisive you are on the field, whether you're thinking too much on the field. You know, a lot of factors like that. So he's going to be a mid to late round guy. He won't be a mid round guy after round 5. Somebody's going to take him in round 5, 6, or 7 if they take him at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keaton Thompson out of Virginia, 6'5", 213.
If I don't see him getting drafted, or signed, unless they want him to be like some sort of gadget quarterback when he was a quarterback at Mississippi State.
Okay. CJ Johnson out of East Carolina.
I love him. He's Noah Brown with a little bit more skill. If you think of Noah Brown, who just got signed by the Houston Texans in free agency, who had, I think 800 yard season this year because in relief of the injuries that they had in Dallas. Great at the catch point. I think he's decent route runner. He's never going to hit Larry Fitzgerald in terms of the Larry Fitzgerald track, but he's aspiring to be in that hemisphere of a player.
I thought, I have a mate who's a Dallas fan, and I said, mate, you don't realize you have probably one of the top number 3 wide receivers playing in Dallas at the moment. That's how I saw Noah Brown.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how teams go. Again, when you don't have speed, a lot of guys who are making decisions, they just don't get excited about that, so they can see all these skills. They see brains, they see skills, they see everything that's competent. But then when that cleavage comes walking by, they decide they're going to give that person the opportunity, and it just ruins it for everybody else.
All right. We've only got 2 more, Matt. Tyler Hudson out of Louisville.
Kind of intriguing. Intriguing, worked maybe a couple years away.
And the last guy, I reckon the most blue-collar worker in this draft is Puka Nacua.
Yeah.
Nacua. Just blue-collar, mate. Just getting the job done, doing what I have to do. Just, I just, that's what I liked about him. Is he can rely, he's just reliable.
Some Golden Tate vibes to me.
Oh, nice.
Okay. Yep. So that's it, Matt. We got through them all. I think I did. I think I did pretty good. A to Z. We did very well. Thanks so much for. Is there anybody that we missed?
I would say if there's anybody that would be fun to have talked about, I would say Justin Shorter and Jason Brownlee are interesting, and Antoine Green. Those are 3 players that I would say. Justin Shorter is probably one of those guys that 5-star prospect, went to Penn State, wound up at Florida. Not very fast, big, physical, can make the contested plays. Will probably earn a role on a team one day. That could be semi-productive, maybe not fantasy-driven. Brownlee's fascinating because he's a possession receiver with some of the best hands in the class, some of the most acrobatic catches you're going to see. tough. And then Antoine Green is one of those guys that people look at and say, "Oh, he's a cleavage guy," but I think there's more to his game. Who's more than speed, and I think will show a little bit more of that. So those would be three that I would just say that I could name a few more, but we covered a lot of good guys. Those were all
like Jason Brownlee. I've actually got on my list here, Matt. I thought we've kept you too long. I can't keep just pumping out names to you, but I have got him on the list. I just wrote he looked a little bit in the gauntlet at the combine. He looked a little bit nervous.
Might have been.
Yeah, he just looked a little bit, because what I saw him catching the ball wasn't what I saw in the gauntlet. He just looked like he was really reaching for the ball, not letting it come to him. I think he just maybe the occasion and everybody watching.
Maybe he spent more time practicing what's really going to happen on a football field than trying to do a game show thing at the combine.
Right.
Yeah, without a doubt. But mate, outside of that, Matt, thank you so much. This is great. Another year down.
Hey man, it's always a pleasure, and thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy getting to do this with you guys, and we have some good laughs, and have a good time doing it. And
and I sort of feel like this year, maybe above some that we've previously had, landing spot's going to be everything, really.
Yeah, it's going to be a big deal for this particular class, and I think also it's just how, because how they're going to be used. Some guys who just aren't particularly technically sound, they might get opportunities to be protected a bit. And so you can leverage their skills in a level that they might have fantasy value where people are crowing about how good they are. And then, we're looking at them 2-3 years down the line. And once the defenses say, we're going to take that away. Can you do something else other than run this one pattern or run the screen? And when they can't do it, that might be an issue. So I don't know. To me, this is one of the most fun classes to watch, because I think I can foresee this being a really good class or being an utter disaster. And I haven't seen it on that wide of a spectrum with most classes, but this is the one where I'm looking at that just feels like it could be an absolute great adventure story or an utter disaster movie.
Yeah, I said to AJ, usually there's like 5 guys I can pick out, and then the rest of them, there's a group behind them. If you threw the coins, you threw it up in the air and you grab one out, well, I'd be happy with that. I feel like this class, if I threw them all up in the air, that's sort of how I see the class, and just I get what I pull out. So
I think there's 7 tight ends, 3 quarterbacks, and 6 running backs that you really want to have, and there's 5 to 7 wide receivers that you could put in that group and feel okay about. And then after that, I would probably just keep trying to see if those tight ends fell. If there's another 6, there's 12 running backs total that I feel pretty strong about. Maybe you could identify them after receiver, but wide receiver is easy to trade. So, if one of them flashes for a couple of games, you can sell them for a little bit of value. If you're one of those people who do that kind of thing, I would advise that probably with Quentin Johnston, if he lands on a team like the Bills, or a situation like that where it gets to be the Gabriel Davis. I caught 3 touchdowns in a game, and a lot of that had to do with how a foiled game plan due to the greatness of a quarterback, and just say sell high and go from there.
Yeah, well, it's just about time there now, Matt. It would be about 1:30. That's base playing time, mate.
It could be, but it's triggering the dog. Maybe he's been. I don't know, man. He's we have some work to do. He doesn't mind the bass. Actually, it's the saxophone that kind of gets him a little triggered. So but
just a bit of blues, is it, Matt? Do you play
blues and jazz? So
nice.
I listened to a podcast about Louis Armstrong.
You did?
Yeah, about 2-hour podcast. Oh, mate, geez, he was around in a rough time. Bloody hell.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely.
Jeez. And what
most of them were. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Well, Miles Davis, I laughed because I was playing some Miles Davis while I was in the kitchen doing some work, and I'm watching him as he's listening to Miles Davis, and literally the head's cocking this way, and he's like doing all this stuff. And I'm transcribing some Miles Davis solos, and I'm laughing because, most of the time I'm working with headphones on. So, during the summer now, we got them in January, and I haven't been playing as much. I'm gonna have to start playing in the day because at night he's gonna lose his mind when I start playing. I can already tell with that, but he seems to be interested. But then again, we were watching Jordan Peele's Nope, and he kept looking. He was watching that and just growling. He was literally watching it and growling for like 30 minutes. And that's why I think he was triggered before the show.
No, he knew where the bloody UFO was before we even worked it out. That's what it was. He goes, man, that's behind the cloud. How are you bastards not seen it? That cloud hasn't moved for 45 minutes. Spoiler.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. It's all right. I mean, but I get it. I mean, I don't know. But we found, my friend found this dog at a gas station, like in southeast Georgia. And he was like, he had some scars on him that looked like maybe, and he had been shot with some BBs. Probably he was around a farm. He's about a year old, and he's had some BBs embedded in him, but he's friendly as all get out, sweet to kids, friendly with other dogs. It's all great. But there are little things that you see that trigger him, and we're waiting to see what that is before we that we can kind of tell. But we joked today that maybe aliens trigger him. So we're like, what did this dog see? Like, I'm starting to get a worry that he's like growling at alien pictures. I'm like, maybe they do exist.
Growling,
Look
I'm out the window. What's out the window?
We might have to nickname him Area 51.
Just before you go quickly, Matt, any new improvements on the house? Because every year there's something going on, and
my wife is currently getting a law degree at Cornell. And so she
tools down.
What's that?
Tools down.
Tools down, and she's hating it. She's hating it. She's mad at me because she's like, how did you go along with me wanting to do this? Like, I feel like you've convinced me. She's like, she's about to write her capstone, and she'll be presenting that in August. So she's only 4 months away, but she's like, she's doing really well. But she did get to do some work organizing our kitchen over the past few weeks, and you would think the light just came back on in her life after like a long winter of this stuff. But I've only have to grin and bear 4 more months of her going, it's your fault that I'm at Cornell University. And I'm thinking, okay, fine, sure, I'll take that, but you're not quitting. So there we go.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, Matt. Get to bed, and we'll hopefully touch base during the year. We really need, every year we say we do, but we should get together and just see how these guys are going, like at the midpoint of the season, just to see,
man, I'm always good with that. We can figure that out. I might have to have you guys come on at midnight at that point and during the day.
Don't give us the option between our midnight and your midnight, Matt. We're going to take your midnight every time.
I'm sure you will. It looks nice outside back there.
It's a beautiful day.
Yeah. That's what my day looked like earlier, but
Sorry.
it's like
Oh, good. Oh, good. Thanks again. Hey, do you want to give a plug out before we go, Matt, about
the RSP?
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I'm on the show because I do this. I do this book.
Sorry, Matt.
We're not very it's my livelihood that I do for the past 18 years, called the Rookie Scouting Portfolio. This is where all this information comes from. It's like you guys said, it's 1,163 pages this year.
Yeah.
It's one of the 2 most purchased independent draft guides by NFL personnel, at least according to recruiting directors at major colleges like SMU. Alex Brown at SMU, who's worked at Houston and has worked at Rice and worked at SMU, and meets with these scouts and personnel people in the league and sees what they're looking at as cross-checking devices, and has told me that. So, it's a fantasy. I've been writing about fantasy since 2003. So I definitely put a fantasy projection on this, but it is NFL approved. Another story I'll give you, because you can go to my site, mattwaldman.com, and it will show you everything that's in there. I have video tours. Most people are shocked at what they get. It's very low on design. There's really no bells and whistles. Looks like something you might have found in a stray file cabinet somewhere. And then when you open it up, you'll find that it's got the content is as deep as it gets. But You know, I had someone write me after the 2019 season that LSU won the national championship with Jamar Chase and Burrow and all that. And somebody said, wrote me and goes, I'm reminded you, this is my fantasy moments nowadays. It's like, I owe you a long overdue thank you. Your videos on YouTube at Matt Waldman's RSP Film Room, you know, and your site really helped me learn a lot about the game, to the extent that that I got a job being in football operations for LSU, and they told me that they had never had a non-football person in this role, but they were impressed with my knowledge. And he said, I got most of that learning from reading and watching your work. And now I'm at the combine right now, and there were two scouts who were in front in line with me as we were waiting in line to get into a part of the facility. And one of the scouts turned to the other and says, he said, if I ever meet Matt Waldman, I'm giving him a big hug. And I said, do you mind telling me what team the scouts were? And he said, yeah, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Wow.
So that was kind of a bucket list moment. It's almost as good as being a Cleveland Browns fan who suffered through the John Elway era with a father who was a John Elway fan. And I had to grow up going to Denver to watch John Elway play, though they never won a game when I went to a game. So that was some consolence. And going with my buddy Cecil Lammy to the Senior Bowl in Mobile, and we go to his coffee shop, Cecil, the great guy that he is, he loves his like coffee milkshakes, you know, those things that they sell, you know, with like the extra super duper frothy on top latte with the cherry on top. He's got to get one of those things after we had some barbecue before we go back to practice in the afternoon. So we go there, and there's like Rob Rang with Fox and Emery Hunt and Gene Bramall with football guys, and me and Cecil we kind of see each other all there, say hello. And in walks John Elway with two guys. And Cecil knows John because, you know, he covers the Broncos. So he says, hey, John. John waves at him. I'm looking at John. And I'm looking the way I do like right now. So he's flanked by two guys. And one of them obviously like he played offensive line at one time, but he's about our age. So older dude. And another guy next to him would look like might have been like a return man, running back, kind of, you know, and build. But they obviously were athletic, older guys. And they were talking with him, getting in line. And I looked at Cecil jokingly and said, I'm going to go sack John Elway. Do you have bail money? Because at least on behalf of Cleveland Browns, everywhere, somebody in Cleveland needs to sack him. So I'm doing it. So I get in line. He's laughing at me. I get in line. I'm behind them. They're talking. The big guy of the two turns around, sees me, turns back, and then does a double take. And John Elway's talking to him, and he turns his back on John Elway and starts geeking out and going, you're that guy from the YouTube videos. I've learned more about football watching your videos than I had any time when I was in the NFL. I played left tackle in the NFL. And I go, who'd you play for? He goes, my name's Lanzino. And I said, oh, so you played for the Packers and the Browns and you were in the USB? He goes, yeah, you know. And then he grabs his friend who was talking to John, turns him around. John's still talking to him. And now they are both looking at me. And he goes, yeah, I subscribed to his blog. You know, you got his book. It's a great book. John's looking over their shoulder as they're looking out over me. And like, who the hell is this guy? And Lance is like, we're trying to get a scouting job hooked on with John here. So we're meeting with him, and I'm going, well, you're doing an awfully good job of it by basically turning your back on him in the middle of a conversation. And I'm looking over at Cecil and the rest of it. They're all looking, just shaking their head, laughing. You have a business card, all this. The only thing I should have done, because my buddy at SMU said, what you should have done was taken your card out, handed it to John Elway, and say, give me a call, and then just walk away, you know. But instead I did get to tell my dad that two former NFL players basically dissed John Elway trying to get a job with him in public because they were geeking out over me.
Oh,
So
that's
that's
so cool.
that's a bucket list moment for someone who absolutely despised John Elway as a football fan.
I thought you were going to tell us that the offensive lineman noticed that hey, this guy's creeping a bit closer, and all of a sudden he's defending John Elway. He's tackled you to the ground.
No, I wouldn't have been
No.
creeping up. There was no way I would have been able to attack him that way. I would have had to like run from 10 yards. And I mean, look,
The short area explosion's not there anymore, Matt.
I would have had to get a runway, and if I was going to do it, I was going to do it all the way.
Great story.
Yeah.
All right, Matt. Well, thanks a lot. And we'll put a plug on this, and when we tweet it out as well, where everybody can find you. And I watch a lot of your film room.
Oh, they're
every
fantastic.
player that I looked at, I went and saw if you did a film room on them after I'd looked at them. I think one of the players was just blocking. It was a blocking.
Yeah, it was probably DeBose, I think.
It was DeBose. I'm thinking, well, obviously Matt doesn't think too highly of him because he's just got him just as a blocker.
No.
So.
No, I'm right now. I haven't done as many film rooms as I used to, and I'll be doing more down the line. But I'm building a multimedia glossary of terms for the RSP. That's audio, video, and written word. And I want to make that kind of an evergreen thing. So you'll see for the next couple of years with this project that I'll still do the film rooms on players, but you'll see these like little 3 to 5 minute things where it's like, I'm focusing on one thing with everything.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the great, Matt, because our attention span these days is about 3 to 5 minutes.
True enough, so no one's going to know about any of this, at this point, unless you recommend to watch it like for the next 30 days. And I think then that they'll eventually get here. So, I'm glad I could spend the month with you guys listening to this at this point.
Very good. All right, Matt, we'll get to bed. Thanks so much for your time, mate. It's always greatly appreciated.
Man, it's my pleasure, guys. I love doing this with you guys.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
All the best.
Ciao, mate.
Thank you.
See ya.
Take care.
Bye. Bye. Okay. Well, that was Matt Waldman. He's given a plug for the RSP.
Grand Prix is almost finished.
Oh, all right. Okay. No worries. So Matt Waldman, RSP. As I said, it's like over 1,100 pages. Not that it's necessary to read all that because he's got all his data in the RSP. But you can drill down and see all of the. I mean, he's not just anecdotal. He's based everything on data. It's all there.
Yep. Not the way I do it.
You do it differently. But
I've got.
I'm not saying you're wrong, G. It's just
this is how many pages? 128 page binder. Okay, that's back and front, so it's only 60 odd pages.
Ben said something before. There
I'm still 20 pages from the end, so there you
go.
That's mine. So
there you go. Ben said, "What do you do to fill the other 127 pages?"
Exactly.
Okay, well, listen. Thanks everybody. It's been a bit quiet on the Aussie guys front, but we like sort of doing this sort of stuff. To be honest,
and we'll do it. We'll try and get a running back one up.
Well. Exactly. So get to the Grand Prix. Get to see you across the finish line. But thanks everybody. End broadcast. Till next time. Ciao.